We've lost over 98% of the original longleaf pine forest in East Texas. Losing longleaf pine is a huge deal for all of us. So how do we restore the longleaf ecosystem and enhance longleaf pine that currently exists while still assisting landowners who need to generate income from their forest? Well, that's the mission of the Texas Longleaf Team. The beauty of the Texas Longleaf Team is that it's a multi-agency, interdisciplinary team of folks that are interested in assisting landowners in restoring the longleaf pine ecosystem. Longleaf pine is important for migratory birds, it's important for carbon storage and sequestration, it's important for water quality and quantity. We're in this with the landowner. We're going to share the costs of especially initial planting and establishment of longleaf throughout the entire restoration process.
Well, welcome back, and thank you again to the 2021 Conservation Wranglers. Those are the 3 videos that you've seen today for the continued work and impact that you're having and allowing us to continue to hold up your projects as examples. I hope you enjoyed the break. We have had 2 amazing panels today, and I'm very excited to end with models of success. Don't forget, if you are online, you can join us by asking questions at info@texanbynature.org or on the YouTube stream. So we really couldn't have a discussion about the future of conservation without diving into programs and thinking that are changing behaviors in action. And that's what you're going to see from the stage in a couple of minutes. These are models that we can emulate and that we can evolve no matter what type of organization that you have. Thomas Edison once said, "Keep on the lookout for novel ideas that others have used successfully. Your idea has to be original only in its adaptation to the problem you're working on." And isn't that what the entire discussion is about today? Learning from each other? We don't have to be the king in the room saying, it was my idea. It's all of our idea. We can all work together to make it better. We can adapt, emulate, and evolve. His quote resonates with the work that Texan by Nature has done with the Texas Water Action Collaborative. You've heard a couple of folks mention TexWAC today. Some people said Texas Water Action Collaborative. Well, it was actually inspired by the California Water Action Collaborative. And TexWAC is not the exact same. It's been adapted to meet the needs of Texas. When we all first started talking, we're like, this is Texas. It's going to be about action. It is the Action Collaborative here in Texas. And we set the model up to do just that. It builds on what makes Texas a model globally. Diverse resources across 11 ecoregions, diverse citizens to the tune of 30 million Texans, industry opportunity, leadership in energy, food, manufacturing, technology, and more. What started as a pilot here in North Texas has proven to be a successful model of bringing conservation and industry together to fund water in Texas that benefits quality and quantity community engagement. Open communication between this group, it's a group made up, if you haven't heard already, of many industries and many conservation partners. Standard approach and clear metrics have been drivers for successful partnerships and funding to date. With a little seed funding, we're at about $1.6 million in funding to water initiatives in North Texas at this point through TexWAC. So this is certainly a model of seeing something that was working a little bit somewhere else, continuing to make it better, and then applying it. So our next speakers have taken this system-level approach and thinking that we heard about earlier. They've innovated, and they've taken it to new and impactful levels. From supporting our natural world and generating tourism, to feeding our population, to managing waste, to collectively solving challenges, to utilizing and building technology that drives efficiency, these projects can be replicated in Texas as soon as you leave here today. As we hear from these leaders, I hope that you'll think about how their learnings and models relate to your organizations and projects. What if you took these methods home and applied them? What if you made them uniquely your own? What if you adapted them? How can we lead not only in new models, but in accelerating progress by building on each other's innovation? Today we'll hear from Abraham Tweme, the Director of Sustainability and Public Affairs, Communications, and Sustainability for Coca-Cola Southwest Beverages, Dr. Michael Wetz, the Chair of Coastal Ecosystems Processes at Hart Research Institute, Philip Walker, the owner of Seven Oaks Ranch and president of the Ozona Chamber of Commerce, and Eden Dion, Vice President of Energy and Chemical Management Programs at IBM. Similar to previous panels, you'll hear presentations in succession. Please hold your questions. We'll have 20 minutes at the end to dive in deeper. And please join me in thanking the presenters. Abraham.
Thank you, Jody, and thanks everyone for being here. It's really my honor to be a part of this event. It's something that I appreciate a lot, the work that Texan by Nature does in creating these spaces and allowing us as an organization to go out and expand on our strategy. So I know that everybody knows the name Coca-Cola. That's not a surprise, but let me introduce to you all Arca Continental, which is our parent company. So Arca Continental, it's a Coca-Cola bottler, and we're serving 5 countries across the Americas. I'm gonna try to, look this way. So we have presence, of course, here in the US, in Mexico, Ecuador, Peru, and Argentina. And all the rest are just numbers to, try to gauge the size of the company. In reality, if you're not a Coca-Cola bottler, most of these make no sense. But I just want to talk about the 63,000 associates that are part of our organization. And from that point, move to CCSWB, the way that we refer to ourselves, because our Continental Coca-Cola Southwest Beverages definitely is a mouthful. So we try to keep it short with CCSWB. And we essentially have 7,000 associates in Texas and parts of the neighboring states, with 7 production facilities and 37 distribution facilities. We're the 3rd largest bottler in the US in terms of volume. So it's a large organization, really. And with that, I want to first introduce our sustainability strategy through our sustainability video that we recently recorded and are very proud about. And maybe I need to hear it again. So maybe no video. Okay, let me see if one more time if it works. Technical difficulties. There we go.
At Coca-Cola Southwest Beverages, sustainability is important to us as a strategic business growth platform, and we work to integrate it into everything we do. We focus our sustainability activities in several areas. In 2020, we joined with the Coca-Cola Foundation to pledge $2 million to support the Nature Conservancy's efforts to ensure there is enough water in our region to meet present and future needs as our population continues to grow.
I think we can skip the video because
Along
now
with the Coca-Cola Company,
there's no image,
we have developed programs to reduce emissions.
Is there a way, can we skip the video and go to the next one? The good thing is I do know what's on the video, so I can talk to you all about that. Okay, perfect. All right, so, well, this slide now without the video, I guess I can tell you all about the context. So we have basically four pillars that we focus on. Our sustainability strategy. 4 that are outward facing and 2 inward facing. The 2 inward facing that you're not seeing here on the screen are culture, and the last one is our social license. So it's more of a how we deal with sustainability within. That's our culture piece, and the social license. It's really how are we able to really group that all together into a reputational impact for the organization. But these 4 pillars here that you see, water, climate, packaging, and communities, these are really where we're able to group everything that we do as an organization. And starting with water, in many ways, thanks to the work that we do with Texan by Nature and many of its members, we are currently replenishing 2 times the water we use to manufacture our products. What this means, it's quite literally that for every gallon that we're taking from the environment to manufacture our product, we're supporting projects that are gonna replenish 2 times that volume. So it's something that we're very proud about, and something that we definitely see as a milestone and as a big part of us doing our part on that water piece. But we also try to link that with the community, and the way we do that is through the distribution of rain barrels. So over the past couple of years, we've distributed over 5,000 rain barrels. Each rain barrel has the capacity to save around 30,000 gallons a year, depending on rainfall and where it's located. So it really is, you know, those are the type of projects where you can really start seeing long-lasting impact. And the best part is we manufacture those rain barrels by reusing our 55-gallon syrup drums. So it's really out of something that would have been waste, we created that opportunity in many, you know, thanks to our great partners, to have that be you know, a source of rainfall interception for the communities to use. On the climate piece, the 2 biggest drivers of this have been our usage of renewable energy and our usage of recycled PET. And with that, we've been able to you know, remove the equivalent emissions of taking 6 million cars off the road for a day. For reference, because I didn't know how much that actually meant, the DFW area as a whole has 4 million cars. So it's basically, you know, taking for 36 hours, a day and a half, all the cars of the DFW area off the road. And from a tree planting perspective, we have supported the planting of over 29 acres of forest, in equivalent of all the tree planting projects that we've done across our stages. The packaging piece, we are currently collecting 6 out of every 10 bottles that we're putting out into the market, and the equivalent volume of that is, you know, then enough to fill out 700 Olympic-sized pools. So a lot of plastic that we're working on getting back. And we are doing a lot of investments, and that's really where I'm going to be focusing the rest of my conversation on, in communities that have some issue with access to recycling, and we've supported recycling access for over 2 million individuals in Texas. And finally, for the communities piece, because sustainability is more than just that environmental aspect, we partner with an array of organizations doing inclusion and diversity, health and wellness, and a lot of very important initiatives. And we've supported through those partnerships over 400,000 individuals, particularly on the education piece, which was really the flagship of what we did last year on the community side. We donated over $3.6 million in both laptop donations, equipment for underserved communities, but also scholarships and grants to support education access. So, as I mentioned, I'm going to be focusing on plastics. I know that's the biggest thing people think when they hear Coca-Cola. So let's make sure we're able to talk about, you know, how we're doing that piece. We like to call this closed-loop recycling solutions. What that means is that we're doing the effort so that every bottle that we put out, we take that bottle back and we use that particular bottle instead of other packaging materials to make new bottles. So with that, you are really closing the loop on the issue of plastic pollution, and you're making sure that our bottles get recycled. So we have 4 things here. We talk first of collection, logistics, recycling, and finally the recycled PET or rPET integration. So when we started with collection, that's really where we noticed the biggest gap. And that's because recycling access varies throughout the state, as many of you here know. And that meant that we needed to go and we needed to create community-based solutions, and that every solution was going to be different. If you move, 50 miles to the east, 50 miles to the west, it's going to be a completely new reality, so you have to take that into account. So we created a network of collection points where we're sourcing from the first point of valorization, which is essentially the moment where it moves from being recyclables/trash towards a commodity. So when you do that transaction, that first purchase or sale of the material, that's where we're going and trying to find the material. And the reason for that is very simple. The more you move throughout the supply chain, the more material is going to be lost as we're looking for, or as recyclers and other entities are looking for efficiency. So if we go to that very first part, we make sure that we're capturing as much material as we can. At that point, it starts our logistical network, which, as you would imagine, is a nightmare when you try to capture for every valorization point. So we currently have a couple thousand different points where we're sourcing the material, and that material then gets combined. The way that we make it work is that even if it's a small volume, we find ways to consolidate that material into our overall supply chain. So with that, you don't have the typical concerns that plastic recycling usually has, where if it's not a large manufacturing facility or a large entity, it's hard to close the loop. That's not a perfect solution, and we've had moments where we are not there yet, but we are already making sure that the material doesn't flow into the landfill. So it's building on what you do. First, you stop the material from going to the landfill, but it might get recycled in a different industry, and eventually you grow that program until the point where you can start sourcing that back and integrate it into your bottles. That brings you to the recycling space, which of course it's every recycling facility or bottle-to-bottle recycling facility has pretty similar characteristics. The material gets washed, it gets milled, you get the flakes can then get processed. So there's a lot of intermediate steps there, but eventually from that point you end up with resin, with plastic resin. And that plastic resin, then you have to integrate that back into the bottle. So that's where the other big difference in our model happens, is that our recycling partner is a single one, so we're able to leverage that understanding, that full depth understanding of the resin, to manufacture new bottles made from 100% recycled content, which are out in the market, and you might see the sign. We have basically our core brands in 20 ounce at 100% recycled plastic. And with that, or the way that we're doing that is by supporting access to recycling in communities. So we are identifying communities that have a specific bottleneck that prevents them from operating at full capacity. We engage with that community. We understand, what are your needs, and whether or not that's something that has an infrastructure component that we can support. When there is, we invest in infrastructure, and we create a long-term agreement with that entity, because in many ways, they're all not only looking for infrastructure itself, but they're also looking for certainty that they're going to have a market for the materials at the end. So if we don't work that whole understanding, it's possible that it won't be a long-term solution. So we make sure we integrate that long-term purchasing into the agreement, and finally we support them with additional investment when we identify that they're hitting their next bottleneck. And I have two examples of that. The first one being the McAllen Recycling Center. So this entity, we started working with them in December of 2020. And basically, over the span of a year and a half, they have tripled their recycling outlet for plastics. And really, they have been able to service several neighboring communities. And to date, we have basically sourced around 1 million pounds of PET from this particular location. And we are, of course, now assessing, how can we support you in an additional investment in 2023. We have already provided 2 investments for them. The first was a grant to cover purchase of recycling bins. Then that created a happy problem in a sense, where they didn't have now the infrastructure to go and capture that material and bring that material back into their facility. So we purchased a roll-off truck for them to be able to service those communities. And the second one is Uvalde. The Uvalde Recycling Center unfortunately had to shut down during COVID. It was one of many sites where COVID created a big toll in their operations. And they had two big issues with processing the material. First was that the material was bagged, so it created an additional step for processing. And the second one is just, as you can see on the pictures, the top is before, bottom's after. The material was not really well pre-sorted, so a lot of times the material that they got was not material that they could really work with. So we worked with them. We provided recycling bins so that they could go out and share those with the community. They were able to restart their PET recycling program. And this started in Earth Day of this year. They have around 4,000 pounds right now for recycling. And all of this wouldn't be possible without our biggest member. And that's why I wanted to start at the beginning and talk about our 7,000 associates, or as we like to call them, our 7,000 heroes. They're the big part of what we do. The volunteering opportunities that we do with them, we make sure to link that back into our closed loop strategy. And you will see there that those are all the points where we have our cleanup efforts, where we're sourcing the bottles and making sure that those bottles end up coming back into our supply chain so they can become part of the recycling stream. And since I'm on time, that'll be my last slide. Thank you.
All right, well, I'd like to thank you all for being here, and I'd like to especially thank Texan by Nature for giving us this amazing opportunity to talk about a truly special place on the Texas coast, and that's Baffin Bay, and also to talk about the initiative that we have underway now to improve the health of Baffin Bay. So I'd also like to just acknowledge our partners at the Coastal Bend Bays and Estuaries program, and also a lot of the community members who've worked with us over the years on this on Baffin Bay issues. So for those of you who don't know where Baffin Bay is, it's located about 40 miles south of Kingsville, or 40 miles south of Corpus Christi, next to Kingsville. And it's one of those rare places where you can still go on the Texas coast and be away from people. You can go out on the water there and not see people for miles. So it's just an amazing experience. Unless your boat breaks down, then you got problems. But other than that, it's a really special place where you can still get out and be in nature and not be around people. So, pardon me. So I mentioned Baffin Bay. It's really isolated, really special from that standpoint. I had some videos here, but it looks like they're not playing. But it has some unique features that really, there we go, that make it also special. One is that it has these ancient worm reefs all over the bottom of Baffin Bay that have formed by these calcifying worms. And they're only found in one other place in the world. And they support this just incredible diversity of life, whether it's barnacles and little crabs and shrimp or other critters, or whether it's fish that like to live in the nooks and crannies in these reefs. Just a really amazing diversity of life within these features. And they're sometimes referred to as the rocks of Baffin Bay, or those darn rocks, and various iterations of darn that's not appropriate for this audience. They're degrading because they get hit with boat props. And that obviously creates problems for the boaters, but we're losing these special habitats. And so that's one of the things that we're actually focused on, is how do we protect these habitats and how can we potentially bring them back? So aside from the rocks of Baffin, what it's really known for, though, is the fishing. Baffin just has this ability to support these uniquely high populations of different fish species that people care about: the trout, the red drum, the black drum. So it's just an incredible place to go fishing. And I've heard various estimates of the contribution to the local economy, but nominally for recreational and commercial fishing for Baffin and the Upper Laguna Madre, it's on the order of several $100 million per year minimum. So it's just a really important contributor to the economy of the coastal bend. Unfortunately, we've been dealing with some issues in Baffin Bay that suggest that it's not as healthy as it used to be. Back in the early 1990s, we started seeing these brown tide algal blooms developing in the bay. And basically, when these things happen, they turn the water like chocolate milk, and they spread out from Baffin all throughout the Laguna Madre. And they're problematic because when we get these algal blooms, there's not enough light that goes to the bottom. So we lose really critical habitat like seagrass beds, which are important for fish and all the shrimp and little critters that live in them. And these seagrass beds are also really important from a carbon sequestration standpoint. They're one of the most important carbon trapping habitats in an aquatic system worldwide. So we've had seagrass die off as a result of these algal blooms. And the blooms have popped up ever since pretty regularly. The first bloom actually lasted 7 years. It's one of the longest recorded algal blooms in history. So when I first got involved in Baffin Bay, that was back in 2012, and we started getting concerns being shared from community members and longtime anglers about things that they were seeing in the bay, so the algal blooms, but also we were starting to have issues with big fish kills that were popping up in the bay, and including things like trophy trout and fish that you do not want to see dying, basically. We started also having issues with the black drum fishery. This is really an important commercial fish species. And back in 2012, over 70% of the adult black drum that were caught, they basically had no tissue on them. They had this jelly-like flesh. And so the commercial fishermen, they couldn't sell that. They basically had to discard the fish. So a lot of things were coming together to tell us that Baffin Bay was not as healthy as it used to be and as it needed to be. Unfortunately, at that time, it was strange. You know, Baffin Bay is this special place, but it had really been neglected from a research and monitoring standpoint. So we didn't have a lot of data to try and figure out what was going on. There also weren't a lot of resources available to start data collections. So one of the first things we did is we pulled a lot of the community members together and said, look, we need your help to get this data, to figure out what's going on. So we actually formed a team of citizen scientists. We pulled together communities, community members, they volunteered to help us get the data. And actually this incorporation of citizen scientists into conservation programs is becoming a much more widely adopted practice. And there are several benefits to it. It can help you really greatly expand your scales of data collection, as opposed to just 3 people from my lab going out. When we have 18 people from the community, we can get a lot more data. We can also do it on less resources. And what I found through the citizen science program that was really important is it helped to create a connection between the community and the environment. That one of the really special things for me was seeing how the volunteers over time gained a better understanding of how the ecosystem worked and some of the causes of the change that we're seeing. So we were fortunate when we started this program that we had a community member who was kind of like a magnet for everybody else, a fellow named Scott Murray. And he basically helped to pull together about 18 to 20 citizen scientists. We were able to start off with just a little bit of funding from Clayburgh County and from a few other sources. And since then, we've been very fortunate that seeing the success of this program, we've had other folks step up to the plate with sustained funding, and especially the Celanese Corporation and the Coastal Conservation Association. So with this citizen scientist program, we were finally starting to get a handle on what was going on in the bay. And before I talk about that, I just wanted to show you a brief video of some of our citizen scientists in action. So hopefully this works. I'm gonna try and go back one more time. There we go. Well, we've just completed the first year and we have some very interesting findings, and we're starting to really understand how Baffin Bay works from an environmental standpoint. And this has led to some interesting partnerships looking at fisheries. And all of this, though, was really, it really couldn't have been done without the help of the volunteers as well as our funding partners. So all of that support is really appreciated, and I think it's going to contribute to a much better understanding of what's going on in Baffin Bay. So these citizen scientists came from a cross-section of the community. We had B&B owners, we had commercial and recreational fishermen, you name it. We had a lot of different representation on there. And the one thing that really was the common thread is they all wanted to see the bay get healthy again and be healthy for future generations. So what we ultimately found with this bay was that it's being affected by nutrient pollution. So basically when too much nitrogen and phosphorus are going into the bay and triggering algal blooms and a whole lot of other problems in the bay itself, including some of the things we were seeing with the seagrass beds and the fisheries. So what we did is we came together using the findings from the citizen scientists. We got together and formed a stakeholder group. So we brought together folks from the community to try and figure out, okay, what are we going to do about these issues? And we started off with probably a couple handful of people in a room back in 2018, and we've grown to over 250 people on the stakeholder group right now. And I wanted to particularly highlight the citizens and the landowners, because a lot of those volunteers, they turned out to form the core of that stakeholder group and are really active in it. So that was another one of the advantages of working with the citizen scientists on this effort. Now, our goal with the stakeholder group has primarily been focused on dealing with the nutrient problems. But we started realizing just from feedback we were getting from the community that there was a real desire to see a broader vision for what Baffin Bay could look like again in the future. And so actually we used the Texan by Nature application to start to put together ideas and come up with a real vision for what we're gonna end up with and what we want to look like. And so that's where we came up with this Bringing Baffin Back initiative. And essentially what this is a sustained commitment to really improve the health of both Baffin Bay and also the surrounding economy. Again, recognizing that really important connection between the bay and the folks that live around the bay. So what it looks like, we're taking a phased approach on this. We started off just getting the data that we needed with the citizen scientists back in 2013. Phase 2 is where we really start to turn dirt and fix things on the land that are contributing to the nutrients that are affecting the bay. Actually, we've had some really recent successes there that have started to kick off the watershed restoration part of this. So we were able to get a watershed protection plan approved earlier this year, and that's essentially a menu of options that will help landowners to do things on their land that can improve the water that comes off their land, and it will provide them with resources as well. We also just found out that the Natural Resources Damage Assessment Program, which has money coming from the Deepwater Horizon settlement, they're proposing to put about $5 million towards nutrient reduction activities in the Baffin Bay watershed as well. And there's also been a lot of nice work between our partners and different communities down there that have wastewater infrastructure that is failing and that's contributing to nutrients going into the bay itself. So we have a really nice initiative underway now to try and provide some of these small rural communities with assistance to help them upgrade their treatment facilities. So once we start to get a handle on the water quality and the nutrient issues, then we're going to really turn our attention back to the bay and restoring habitat that's been lost in the bay itself, whether it's the seagrass beds or trying to deal with the serpulid rocks that we're losing in the bay. But sort of overarching all of this, we've recognized that we can do all this work, but if we don't have that next generation of stewards there to kind of pick up the mantle from the folks who've been on the ground doing this now, we may not get very far in the future. So we're going to be putting a lot of efforts towards fostering that next generation of stewards, kids that are interested in the bay. It's been really amazing working with some of the school groups down there, seeing kids that live 3 miles from the bay who've never been on the bay. If we don't get those kids to appreciate the bay and what it means, that's going to affect the long-term success of this project. So we're going to be putting a lot of efforts towards that in the near future. oops, pardon me. A lot of benefits. I'm running short on time, but obviously clean water is very attractive to recreational users compared to dirty water. It can also support better habitat and fisheries. We're really excited about the potential for improving the habitat in the bay that can capture carbon and sequester carbon. There's going to be a lot of educational opportunities for that next generation of stewards and next generation of environmental researchers as well. And then just the co-benefits to the community in all of this, I think, is really important. Whether it's improved infrastructure for waste treatment or increased ag production, there's going to be a lot of these benefits coming down to the community from this project. So if you're interested, if you haven't been to Baffin Bay, first of all, I would strongly encourage you to take that side road and come down and visit the bay at some point. It's just a really special place. But certainly, even if you don't live near the bay, join our stakeholder group to learn more about the bay itself and the efforts down there. Of course, we're always looking for partnership development and folks who have good ideas who can help us to advance some of the goals and accomplish some of the goals that we have in mind as well. So with that, I just wanted to point you to this QR code because it takes you to a website where you can see a video that was made about the Bringing Baffin Back initiative. And it's a lot of interviews with longtime anglers, and it gives their perspective on the bay and what they want to see and how it's changed over time. It's really well done. It actually just won first place at the Texas Water Foundation's annual film festival. So thank you all. So please do go visit it.
Thank you, Dr. Wetz. I need to get to Baffin Bay. All right, and it's really important about what you said about the kids and the next generation. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Philip Walker. I'm really honored to be here on behalf of the Ozona community, Ozona, Texas, the Ozona Chamber of Commerce, and Seven Oaks Ranch, and my family and our partners. Mrs. Bush, thank you so much for starting such a classy, clever, common sense business conservation organization. As soon as I heard the words Texan by Nature, I was in. So thank you all very much. Thank you to the board of Texan by Nature and also for the staff here at the Bush Institute for putting together this great presentation. So really, really appreciate it. My name is Philip Walker. I'm the president of the Ozona Chamber of Commerce and an owner of Seven Oaks Ranch. I'm fortunate to have some of our partners from the ranch here today, which is kind of fun. If you don't know where Ozona, Texas is, go 3 hours west of San Antonio on I-10, and that's it. Crockett County, it's the only community in the 8th largest county in the state of Texas. We got some great dark skies. We're on the Monarch Flyway, and it's a lovely place if you're looking to get away and get some peace and quiet too, and see some dark skies. What I'm going to be talking about today is kind of some synergies, if you will, parallels between a successful conservation plan incorporated onto our family ranch starting in about 2009 or so, and then how that plan was basically incorporated into some of the tourism and education of the Ozona Chamber of Commerce and our interpretive trail. So I'll be going over a few things, basically with the Seven Oaks Ranch first and that model and our conservation initiatives, the ranch history, a little bit of focus, partnerships and volunteers, which I emphasize are very important, the transition to conservation from strictly a livestock agriculture type ranch, grants, really important, the use of prescribed fire, and business collaboration, a very unique business collaboration that turned into an educational documentary film. We've had we were just so blessed as kids to spend a lot of time in the outdoors on the ranch in West Texas and a farm on my mother's side in Navasota, Texas. So we spent a lot of time. We're very fortunate on the weekends to spend time out in nature. And kind of like what Dr. Wetz was talking about, it was instilled in us at an early age Yes, I went off to college and did all those things, but I came back around. And so it's really important to get young people involved soon as possible. And they'll remember that later. You'll see some of those figures over on that T-shirt that one of our volunteers, Sergio, is holding up. That's one of our favorite quotes from Aldo Leopold. That's the original ranch house from back in the 20s. It was strictly goats and sheep ranching for so many years. And like many farms and ranches in that part of the world, you know, Big Bend region, Val Verde County, Crockett County, it was really just ranching with sheep and goats. And it used to be kind of like, you know, Miss Bush has her really wonderful prairie out here that some of you saw during lunch or may have seen it before. She's restored that to what it used to be here. And so that's kind of what we've been doing at our ranch and many other ranches, is to return the land to balance. This area in West Texas used to be like 70% grassland, 30% brush. But over 100 years, when they fenced it off and maybe weren't practicing the best rotational grazing and land stewardship, that grass got suppressed and the brush started to take over. So then it turned into 70% brush, 30% grass. Well, grass is really what you need for your pollinators, hold that rainwater, stop the floods. So that's what we decided to do once we made our mind up which direction we wanted to go. Again, another photo. If you look, very little grass in that photo. Back in the day, I remember in the 70s growing up out there, it was, you know, the mindset was put as many head of livestock on that land as you can. So it was kind of, I would say, more short-term thinking. But to be fair, those folks, including our grandparents, they were just doing what they thought was right at that time, trying to make a living. But you could see it just turned into, we had to start supplemental feeding of hay because the grass was gone. But we made a decision, you know, we came to a fork in the road. We made a decision around 98 or so. My older brother and I, particularly, when we started going out there after college and stuff, it was like, God, this does not look right. We're not biologists or anything. But, you know, where we used to hunt jackrabbits out in that green grass pasture, there's brush there now and rocks. So something is not right here. So we basically, what we did, we decided we were going to make a commitment, and instead of focusing on livestock, we had our ag exemption, our agriculture exemption. We were going to move it into an ag exemption based on wildlife and conservation. So that was the first step of this new era of Seven Oaks Ranch. Of course, you can see a bee box there. You know, Steve was up here talking about his wonderful vet program for bees. That's my niece, Ellie, there. Pollinators are so important, and that's one of the main things that attracted me to Texan by nature. Our father's over there with some seeds from a Native American seed company in Junction, Texas. We just took an acre or two and started planting some milkweed and whatnot, and Indian paintbrush and all kinds of things. That picture there is Taylor Keys is in that photo. That was taken back in 2018 or so. We did one of our first projects with one of our first partners, Texan by Nature. Monarch Way Station, that's through Monarch Watch, and I highly encourage you guys to get certified. You can get it certified for your home, business, whatnot, just like Texan by Nature. But we got about 400 milkweed plugs through that partnership. So partnerships are really what it's all about. You've been hearing many of us speak about it today, and it's just more fun to do it that way too. In addition to focusing on pollinators, restoring grasslands, we love our horned lizards. We have round-tailed horned lizards, and we have our Texas horned lizards, and the horned lizard king of Texas is here, Andy Glusenkamp here somewhere from the San Antonio Zoo, great guy. We also noticed that another partnership we wanted to create was through the Texas Dark Skies Association, or the Texas chapter of the International Dark Skies Association, and those fine folks are here today too. I'm proud to say I think we're the first ranch in Crockett County to get our Dark Skies certification. And those partnerships, they built and they created this energy. It got us more attention, and conservation groups saw us as what we wanted to be seen as. We really want to turn this ranch around, be an example for others, and make a difference and turn a wrong into a right. Supplemental water is something else we really got involved in. We would have tanks that would overflow with a solar pump, and it would create a little creek on the ground, and we've had hawks and deer come in, quail, feral hogs, everything. We even have the rain catchment devices which catch the rain and store the water, and out in West Texas, that's really important. So water's life out there, and grass, water, it all comes together. One other thing that we've done for the wildlife is we learned from some of the biologists when we opened up our gates and let them in, is that you put rocks in your troughs, and the birds can fall in there, or if there's a big distance between the water and the lip of the trough, they can fall in, and then they can't get out. So it's very fundamental and simple, but the rocks were just really important, but the bees will land on the rocks too, because they have to drink water as well. So it's really neat to watch all these animals get on these rocks in your livestock troughs, but you turn them into a wildlife water place too. It's really neat. We through Texas Bluebird Society, we started doing bluebird boxes and owl boxes. And all these things, of course, they go towards your wildlife tax valuation. You have to incorporate these practices. If you go wildlife with your ag exemption, there's certain things you have to do, but hopefully you consider them fun and helpful, and it's just what your mission and values are all about. So supplemental water, reseeding, and bird boxes, just a few of the things. So I mentioned earlier conservation partnerships. You have to open up your gates and let people in. And sometimes in West Texas, people are a little too independent and they don't want anybody on their land. Our grandfather had very colorful things to say about Nature Conservancy and Parks and Wildlife when I was growing up. He got pulled out of World War II to go move his Wilson family out of what became Big Bend National Park. So he was not a fan of the federal government. But that's what makes this story so ironic and interesting, is because we've come full circle. We're still getting there. Okay, so again, partnerships. More is better. Texan by Nature, one of our first ones as well. Monarch Watch, Texas AgriLife, Quail Forever, NRCS. It helped us get grants. What is that one there? The Native Texas Prairie. That's my niece Ellie. Grassland restoration programs with Quail Forever. We got into fire. Holistically, fire is one of the best things you can do to restore the grasslands, to cut down on your brush, bring the grass pollinators back. It's just a fun thing to do. We worked with students, volunteers, family, NGOs, federal state agencies, Sul Ross State University, Texas State, as well as Angelo State. A lot of fun. Bringing the people outdoors together. Some of the best friendships are made. It's just a fantastic time to be outdoors with people, having a positive impact on their lives. And you know, deep down inside, I think everybody likes to burn stuff. They really do. And you can do it legally at our place and many others. So join a fire club. Fellowship in the great outdoors, fun, grounding, good for all the senses, fighting nature deficit disorder. It helps heal yourself while healing the land. It's done a lot for me and so many people. Just being outside and breathing fresh air. That's what fire can do for the land. Bring your bluebonnets back. We were so honored. It's my father there. I don't think he ever thought we'd win an award for conservation at our place, because it was just looked so bad for so long. But with people, friends, positive energy, we even got recognized as Business of the Month. My grandfather be turning over in his grave. One of the most unique partnerships that we got through these awards was a partnership with Desert Door Distillery in Driftwood, Texas, the only Sultol distillery in the state of Texas. And they brought some wonderful people to help us with our fire programs, our land stewardship programs. Can't say enough about Desert Door. They created a product there on that bottle. They took the burned Sultols from the ranch and created a beverage called backburn, which is a term used in prescribed fire. And it sold out really quickly. That was really neat. So, Desert Door. The Chamber of Commerce, I'm going to talk really quickly, briefly about what we did, what we're doing at the Chamber of Commerce that we kind of just took from Seven Oaks Ranch and that successful model. We started focusing on heritage and nature tourism. We're a Texas Parks and Wildlife stop along the Wildlife Trail of West Texas. We are members of the Texas Pecos Trail of Texas Historical Association. Other partnerships, Texan by Nature, of course. Very proud of that sign I put up a few months ago. That was a great day. International Dark Sky Association, Texas chapter, and Wild Spirit Wild Places was fantastic nonprofit arm of Desert Door Distillery. Great conservation organization. We have our interpreter trail, native species, wildlife habitat. We just put up an owl box. So we're really trying to expand the educational element of the Chamber of Commerce's interpretive trail, expanding our partnerships, which helps with marketing. We have water catchment out there as well, which is important in West Texas. We're on the Monarch Flyway. We've just basically, it's just right underneath our noses. What do we have here that we can market that's simple? We're on the Monarch Flyway. Okay, let's put more milkweeds on our interpretive trail. Okay, let's maybe get a game camera up and put it live on the internet. There's things like that we're trying to do. So it's very simple sometimes. We started a new Dark Skies recognition program with the help of IDA Texas, International Dark Sky Association. So we always have a business of the month in our chamber newsletter. But by recognizing a local business for being dark sky friendly, we've basically doubled the amount of chamber members that we can put in our newsletter and recognize. And it's been accepted and embraced really, really well. A lot of folks that live in this dark town of Ozona, Texas, they didn't really realize they had dark skies. So I'm like, have you ever looked up out here? And then everybody realized, yeah, we do love our dark skies. Okay, well, so now we have a dark sky business recognition program. We have, just to our west, a really beautiful park, about 4,000 acres in conjunction with Parks and Wildlife. The Escondido Draw Recreation Area is now applying for their International Dark Skies Preserve. So that's fantastic press for Ozona. We did a land stewardship event in February with support from Desert Door's nonprofit arm, Wild Spirit Wild Places, and you recognize those symbols that were on the Seven Oaks shirt earlier. It was a fantastic event. We had marketing items that would say the superstars of land stewardship coming to Ozona. It was kind of like the circus coming to town. And then we give you a drip torch and let you go burn stuff. And then we had booth vendors and great talks by Andy Glusenkamp, or Dark Skies people, Devil's River Conservancy, pollinators. We just had a great variety of education. There's just the brochure there. Outdoors, indoors as well. We had the fire outside, and then we also had our vendors in our local convention center, brought needed money to town, if you will, great networking, and it allowed Ozona to advertise and market themselves in a different new way instead of just hunting, oil and gas, and ranching. And then we were so fortunate to be covered in a lot of different media for doing such a great event. There's the local landowner with Karen and Brent Luby, who are here today with Wild Spirit Wild Places. They were our major sponsor, and Ozona Bank and a few other great ones. But it was just a wonderful, positive, educational event. And if you would like to see the incredible documentary that was done, you can go to that website right there. It's a really fantastic story, and we've actually done 2 documentaries with Desert Door, Wild Spirit Wild Places. So very fortunate for them and their mission. Thank y'all so much.
This is for short people. Next time, Joni, you need to put Philip last. I don't think I could come close to his presentation. But thank you, Mrs. Bush, for creating this wonderful organization. And we were very humbled when we received the news from Texan by Nature that we were selected as one of this year's honorees. And when me and our team looked at Texan by Nature, we never even heard about this. We said we love it. And you put on the map this topic, conservation, which is so important, but often seem to be overlooked. So thank you for that. So today I'm going to share a little bit about IBM's environmental program over the years, and that's going to be front end of my presentation, and I'll end with an application of what we are doing today using technology to help others and work with others, collaborate with others in this area. So IBM, 50 years ago, that's when IBM's then CEO, who was our second CEO, Thomas J. Watson Jr., who was the son of our founding CEO, issued IBM's first corporate policy on the environment. He was a visionary person. And that was 50 years ago, and we have continued our commitment, I could say that. I've been with the company almost 40 years, and I'm fortunate to have really spent my entire career in this area. Very proud to be associated with the company. And how do we do that? So IBM is a company that's over 115 years history. So we are one of the oldest technology companies. And our commitment really to environmental management is enabled by what we call a global environmental management system. We are very much a system and process-driven company. So what does that mean is that we don't count on a specific individual to carry on the torch. For this commitment to continue, we believe it has to be system-driven. So it's not relying upon a charming CEO or a competent team of passionate employees, but it has to be system-driven, has to be integrated into what we do every day. So what we say is that it's really at the foundation of our environmental accomplishment. We don't think we could do much less sustained, in a sustained manner without a system. We're just human beings. We're not perfect. And through this management system, we articulate roles, responsibilities, and accountability. So it's not that you say, I'm going to have a goal, and then you're done with it. Accountability is documented in the management system. And as I mentioned before, this system enables us to carry out our commitment through good times and lean times, really, in IBM's own business or more macroeconomically, and also endures changes in senior management. I think we're on our 9th CEO. Our CEO tend to stay pretty long, 115 years, we have about 9, but still, there's 9 individuals. We rely upon this environmental management system, so it's important, and I want to mention that. Today, IBM is a very different company. We are what we call a technology company that is focusing on artificial intelligence and hybrid cloud, for whatever it means to the audience here, compared to even as shortly as about 30 years ago, we were very much a vertically integrated manufacturer. Upwards of 75% of our revenue came from selling computer equipment, servers, storage systems. Today, that's only 10% of our revenue. So the company has transformed over 100 years, and we, as I said, rely upon this management system to carry our commitments. So quickly, we, as part of the management system, is setting goals to drive performance. And right now, last year we refreshed our goals, and we have goals in 5 specific areas. So today, I'm only going to really focus on conservation and pollution prevention, as opposed to all the 5 areas that's listed there. It's interesting, I forgot the very first one. I should have had 1973, because that goal was under energy and climate. So in 1973 was when IBM formalized our energy conservation program, and we have sustained that program since 73, however many years ago that was, 50 years. Before that, like many companies, we've always said energy conservation because it makes business sense. It saves money, right? And we've always said that the most environmentally preferable energy is that 1 kilowatt hour you never had to use. So we've sustained the program 1973. We've set a goal on energy conservation since then, and we've continued to have a goal. Between 1990 and now, just for perspective, our energy conservation program has saved the company over $600 million. So it really makes both environmental sense and business sense. So I'm not going to read through the goals, but these are just some topical areas that we have goals in conservation and pollution prevention, because preventing pollution directly minimizes our impact on the environment and improves conservation, nature, health of nature. I wanted to highlight about our relationship with the World Habitat Council, Wildlife Habitat Council. IBM has been a long-time corporate member since 1991. Many of the corporate membership there includes companies who are in extractive businesses, chemical companies. These are very responsible corporations. They tend to own large tracts of land, but they have tremendous conservation program in conserving their property. And we've been affiliated with WHC since 1991. At the time, we had upwards of 40 major manufacturing sites globally. When I say major, some of those have like more than 10,000 employees. Some places with 15,000 employees, large tracts of land. And we have worked with WHC to have our sites certified for conservation and education excellence. And today we have only 4 sites that sustain that certification because many of the large plants has been divested through business transformation. So what do we do today in addition to these places that we actually have the ability to become certified? What we do is, I'm going to skip. What we do is continue to work with Wildlife Habitat Council, and one of our goals, we do many things with them. One of our goals is on pollinator conservation. And the reason I want to highlight this here is, as I mentioned, current IBM business has limited number of properties that we own, right? Limited number of properties that's large. We today lease about 1,000 places around the world, unique places. We lease through landlords. Many of these places are high-rise buildings, some are campuses, but much smaller than our previous footprint. So we recognize we need to work much closer with landlords to get things done. And in terms of pollinator conservations, we are also looking at not just creating these habitats on properties that we own, but even on top of a high-rise building in New York, in London, in Brazil. So it's fascinating to be exploring different approaches. And we are also working with WHC to generate educational material and making them available to our employees. Employees are passionate, our employees, like employees of many companies, passionate about the environment. And these education material were geographic specific. IBM is present in over 100 countries. We have employees in all continents. But pollinators are different, right? Vegetations are different in different places. So these materials are place-specific, and we make them available to our employees, and we encourage them to take this home, to do it at their homes and share with their communities to further extend the reach of our commitment and to get communities involved. This last chart is just to quickly show that in addition to having programs and performances, we've also very transparently disclosed our performance for many years. We have issued an annual environmental report for over 30 years, and we'll continue to do so, putting out what we do for the general public. So for the remainder of time, I want to switch gear to what we're doing in applying technology. So as an AI and hybrid cloud company, we think one of the ways we could contribute to conservation, to environmental improvement, is through application of our technology. So this specific example is our collaboration with Texas A&M. And it specifically is talk about using technology to help make better decisions in agricultural practices. Sustainability Accelerator is IBM's flagship program. Basically, this is a program for IBM to implement philanthropic contribution, if you will. And the majority of our philanthropic contributions are through technology and knowledge, as opposed to cash. So that's just our philosophy. What it requires is for us to make our technology available as well as our scientists available to an organization, as opposed to a different approach, which is not wrong or right. it's writing a check, for example, to enable the organization to do something. So this example is with Texas A&M, as I mentioned. And specifically, we came together to solve the problem of when to water, trying to help farmers on when to water. And by the way, this is here in the United States, but we've worked on this topic in other parts of the world, in Africa, in Latin America. So you may think it's trivial, but I think if we have better knowledge, we'll be better able to make decisions that help us conserve water as a natural resource, but also things like fertilizers. Dr. Wetz mentioned about algal bloom problems in lakes. And that's not unique to Texas. We have the same issue in New York. And often that is the problem of over-fertilization. You have nitrogen runoffs into your lakes. So when to water, it's a simple but pretty deep question. And what we try to do here is, we have gobs and gobs of data. We have technology that's increasingly more accessible and affordable. So what we ask ourselves is, what can we do to bring these things together? For example, low-cost sensors to help farmers detect moisture level in soil. That's a sensor part of it. Artificial intelligence to augment our thinking. Someone said earlier, well, and I agree, all models are wrong, but some are useful. So you bring together AI and knowledge, you apply your intelligence to help you make decisions, not to replace your intellect. So artificial intelligence is another tool that we bring to the table. Data, right? Weather data, whether it's owned by the weather company or somebody else's organization. There's so much data out there. So we thought we could bring our technology, our analytics ability, our modeling ability, sensor ability to the table. And while Texas A&M is an organization with domain expertise meaning expertise in agriculture, we don't have that. We're a bunch of technologists. So we came together and tried to answer the question to help farmers, how can we digest, or first analyze the mountains of data, digest that, and hopefully allow them to look at the data and extract insight from the data and display that in something that is like a handheld device that they can use. We were motivated, as I mentioned earlier, for two main reasons. One is for conservation, to lower our impact on the environment from our day-to-day practices, but also second is to help farmers become more profitable in their business, right? Less irrigation, less use of fertilization would cause them to be more profitable. So I mentioned about the partnership, and essentially you will see on the left-hand side, it's a potential dashboard you can display on a handheld to say, well, when did it rain? Was it 3 days ago? Was it 4 days ago? What is the moisture level of my soil? And we can actually weave into different data points. You can look at crop composition, crop rotation. You can look back historically and help a farmer make better decisions. And this is my last slide. Some of the pain points that we try to solve are listed on the chart, and I'm not going to repeat. One of the things I like the most is actually the one about technology barrier, e.g. Wi-Fi unavailability. It's just so annoying when you want to use a cell phone, you don't have Wi-Fi, right? So this is one of the things we're working on, is to make these applications workable offline. So if you're out in the field, you download this information, right? You don't need to have real-time data on weather, but you have what you need on the cell phone for what you need to do that day. So this is just a quick example of what we're doing to solve a day-to-day problem. And so I hope this meets your expectation, Johnny. All right.
Thank you to each of you for such incredible examples, of models, making sure everyone's awake. So thank you guys so much. We'll have 20 minutes of Q&A. Reminder for those that are online, info@texanbynature.org or the YouTube stream. And if you're in the audience, if you would raise your hand if you have questions.
Well, while they're thinking, we did have one online question for Philip. Get back to it, apologies. Philip, so how did Seven Oaks Ranch get started in conservation, and what advice would you give to fellow landowners out there? What was the first step that you took?
Thank you for the question, Jenny. The first step was just making a mental commitment, figuring out what your values, incorporating your values into management. What do you think about when you're on the land? What do you want the land to look like? What do you want to be remembered? What's your legacy when you're gone? So it was really just making a commitment, creating a vision based on your values, and then also starting to talk to like-minded people. Our grandfather, God love him, was a great character. That wasn't his thing. He wasn't really into partnering and letting people come into his ranch. And that's very common in that part of the state, as in some places in the United States. But you have to open your gates and learn to work together. Open your gates and collaborate is kind of one of my sayings, and it's more fun. And if you're concerned about insurance things, you just make sure you get your correct signage up, the Agritourism Act signs, and to protect you against liability, and put a really good release together, because that is a concern for some. But you can get around that if you want to.
Open your gates and collaborate would be a really good t-shirt. I would just like.
We'll make them.
This is also, Philip, this is Joe Craft, and I just love what you've done, and obviously you have great passion for it. If someone was more pragmatic and less idealistic, and they just looked at the economic cost of doing what you've done, and then what that's done to the value of their property, is there a case to be made that your ranch is more valuable than it was 30 years ago, and that the expense that you spend didn't bankrupt the average rancher?
Great question, because that is the balance. And the way we've quantified our success is, so we formed these partnerships, and then we were more apt to get grants, because the grant writers would see, okay, these folks are doing this, 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 and this, and I know that person that they, he knows Joni, and whatnot, all these different organizations, and it just gives you a little more credibility, so you're apt to get more money to do prescribed fires, to do planting. But yes, to answer your question, we have seen a massive return. It has built the value of the ranch. Some of our neighbors look just like ours did 20 years ago, and the value is there and the habitat is there. We didn't lose as many deer on the anthrax because we had good water infrastructure, and it was through the grants we were able to put more water in. And in West Texas, that's really important, as y'all know. So yes, it has increased the value tremendously, and it has overall holistically made a massive difference in the wildlife. So we can charge more if we offer some hunting. We can charge more because we've got great habitat and great animals. So business and nature, it all goes together.
Thanks, Philip. Reagan, did you have a question?
Dr. Wetz, is what's happening in Baton Bay similar to what is happening where the Mississippi, only on a much greater scale, dumps into the Gulf of Mexico?
Yeah, it's essentially the same thing. You've got too much nitrogen and phosphorus coming in, and triggers the algal blooms, and bad things happen. The difference being that Baffin Bay is, it's kind of isolated, and it doesn't flush out very well. So unlike the Mississippi, with Baffin, when the nutrients come in, they just build up in that system over time. So it just exacerbates the problem.
So what type of emerging models or opportunities are you guys watching? You're all for on the front end of either, or whether it's setting up new systems, IBM's been doing environmental for 50 years, but you're all on this forefront of bringing in new technologies or new ideas, new partners. And I'd love to hear from each of you, what's top of mind? What are you paying attention to right now that you think would be the next step as far as conservation change or a model change for you? Dr. Wetz, I think I'm going to start with you, if that's okay.
Sure.
I thought you were safe in the middle.
Oh, boy. Well, I'm particularly proud of the citizen science model that we incorporated, and increasingly there's a need just for data, for monitoring data, and monitoring is not something that people like to talk about and even fund, but we need that data to establish baselines and to assess how we're doing working towards our conservation goals. So I really like the approach of incorporating citizen scientists.
Is there anything that you would recommend from a citizen science data perspective to make it more palatable for industry or for others to incorporate? Or
Yeah.
Any help that's needed there?
Yeah, that's a great question. That has been one of the hesitancies for folks, thinking about citizen science programs, but it's just really important to be able to demonstrate that your citizen scientists have been trained well and that you can verify the data they've collected. And I had a great group of people who, including my lab manager, who'd worked with citizen scientists in the past. But again, it's just becoming a more widely adopted model, and there are definitely ways of ensuring that the data that's collected is good.
Fantastic. Abraham, you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, I would say, from Coca-Cola Southwest Beverages perspective, definitely in the long term, we're looking at, climate change as the problem to solve. I believe plastics is much more of an optical, and, it does have the fact that it's not really nature, and that breaks into the overall perspective. But I believe climate change has the potential to be much more significant. So from our point of view, sustainable agriculture has been one of the priorities that we're looking into. In fact, I'm definitely reaching out to IBM and learn more about what you guys are doing and see how we can collaborate there. But sustainable agriculture is a priority for us. We see it as creating resilience across our supply chain. And like many other organizations, our focus is, how can we create a sustainability strategy that allows us to not only solve the problems of today, but prevent a lot of problems on tomorrow. And on that perspective too, we are really assessing end-to-end our supply chain to understand, from our water and carbon footprint particularly, how much of that is coming from our suppliers, how much of that is moving, as on end use, and how much of that can we influence, and how positive can we make a change. And I would say we're focusing on making sure that our process makes sense for the future. So integrating recycled plastic, it's a critical part to make sense that our process makes sense in the future. But we're also piloting other initiatives like refillables in El Paso that have been understand whether or not this could be a way to go in the future. We're piloting refillable cups with Burger King and with other entities across the Coca-Cola system to try and understand, how much does it make sense, how feasible it is to use reusable packaging in, fast food. We call it FSOP, food sales on premise venue, and whether or not that makes sense, for the customer as well as it might make sense for us.
Fantastic. I love that focus on the future. And it really dovetails into what Eden said during your talk around the best energy is the kilowatt hour you didn't use, right? So how do you plan for that future to where you're not using resources? So Eden, what models or new tech is top of mind for you guys right now?
I think I would look at it two things. One is how we collectively look at environmental topic. I'd like to see this environmental challenge be viewed in a more integrated fashion. So you look at climate change, right? This is absolutely top of mind. Everybody's talking about it. But I think it's just as important for you to be able to make the connection between pollinators, climate change, and conservation. They're all connected. This way, only by looking at this holistically do we not lose the focus or prioritization. Every part is priority. So take, for example, when you speak to a farmer, in my view, climate change could be very abstract, but what the farmer could do the most to contribute is soil management. When he or she does that well, they are directly helping the climate, right? But you're speaking a language that it's linked to their day-to-day work. So that's what I would like to see, in a more holistic way. From a technology standpoint, a lot's been spoken about data. I think that's important. I have had a very positive experience with citizens organization, the Wilson Center in Washington, D.C. I was a skeptic until maybe 5 years ago, I must say that. But today, I think their citizen scientist practice has really evolved. Second, technology has become so cheap, and we can do many mathematical modeling to help us establish baseline, and citizen science data plays a huge role in that. And as I said, technology being very affordable today helped us to do so, to both validate our hypothesis and confirm whether or not the model is useful or not. And we couldn't do that 10 or 20 years ago because computational cost is just too much. So I think there's a lot to be gained, a lot to be leveraged.
Fantastic, thank you. And Philip, you have done so much on your ranch and with the chamber. What's next? What's the next project beyond burning things?
Well, I think that as far as, innovation is the key in business today now more than ever. You have to ebb and flow quickly, be flexible, be open to new ideas and innovate, or you could get left behind. We've had some tough times at the ranch, making tough decisions, economic decisions. How are we going to do the right thing and still make money? Because this is a business, even though there's a lot of history and whatnot there. But we've actually talked about the effects of climate change on the ranch in West Texas. Wow, like what's going to happen in 10 years? We need to get as much grass on the ground as possible because we want to collect as much rain as we can when it rains instead of run off on all the rocks. So it's really about, again, pollinators and grass and a balancing act and good land stewardship. As far as the Ozona Chamber, we just watch tourism trends, and as the state grows, which we've talked a lot about, the population gets larger, you have nature deficit disorder. I just kind of paint the picture to my board of what have we got that we can sell that maybe some people don't have? How can we get them out here? Well, you don't have dark skies in the cities anymore. We've got that. Let's siphon off some people, for lack of a better word, they're going to Big Bend to come here, to come to our parks. That we're a lot closer than Big Bend, even though we love Big Bend very much. And the Monarch Flyway. So it's just, there's going to be people that don't have that connection to nature. And I believe people want what they can't have oftentimes, and it's that simple. So I've just tried to educate our community and inspire our community to just look what's right under our noses and just market that, and I think we'll be just fine.
Thank you. Well, and I want to go back to what he said about planting grass and planning for future droughts and making sure he's capturing all the water that he can. If you remember, Sarah Schlesinger said earlier, 45% of our water needs to come from conservation practices. And a perfect example that, again, ties into what Eden said about, the best conserved is those that you never used because you changed your ways, you restored your land, you implemented different processes. So just powerful and consistent messaging coming from very different sectors up here. Jenny, I think you had a question? Oh, it's over here, sorry.
This question's for Dr. Wett. Hey, big fan.
That you, Ben?
Hey, thanks. This approach at Baffin Bay, has it been done anywhere else the way you guys are doing it? And kind of how has that gone? Is there an example that would kind of match what you guys are doing in Baffin Bay?
The citizen science program, it's been done in some freshwater lakes. I'm not aware of all that much work that's being done in more marine type systems. But the larger approach of bringing together the stakeholders and really trying to address these issues locally, I think is fairly unique. And I think it's gained a lot of traction. Again, we've already seen some successes in attracting funding to address these issues, and I think it's because we have such a strong group of concerned citizens and people that care about that bay that we've actually been able to do that. So I think it is unique in that regard.
And just kudos to the Bringing Baffin Back team. When we first talked, Mike, did you say that it was 30 years worth of projects that you guys have outlined?
At least 20.
At least 20.
Yeah.
So a significant amount of work, but they're not overwhelmed. And because of the data that they've collected and the way that they're using the citizen science data, they're able to just set it up in phases and go one step at a time to make significant change. And they've done an incredible job of setting up that prioritization model to get the work done. So kudos to you guys on
Do you mind if I just give my spiel?
Sure.
Well, okay. So actually, we modeled a lot of this after Tampa Bay. They had very similar issues to what we did. And they were able to solve these problems. So as far as I'm concerned, if Tampa Bay can do it, we can do it. Because we also don't have, 5 million people in the watershed. It's a much smaller population density, so I think it's in some ways a more tractable issue. So I think we can do it.
I do too. Probably faster too.
Yes.
All right, Jenny.
Melanie Ferguson, Dallas Water Commons again. First of all, just a deep bow of gratitude to everyone who's made this possible and for all of the attendees. I know I will walk away with a great deal of hope and also just joy. I know earlier that we were told that we should not put images of polar bears alone on ice, that's just overwhelming to everyone. But I will say that if you put a hive or a butterfly in a photograph without people, I'm inspired. So this is a question for you, Miss IBM. You mentioned the pollinator, the Wildlife Habitat Council's pollinator conservation toolkits, and I got really excited. And then you said it was only, or maybe it was on the screen, only for employees. So the question is, can you say a little bit more about the Wildlife Habitat Council, because I'm not familiar with them? And then secondly, if you do not provide that toolkit to people who are not at IBM, can you give me the name of a local Dallas IBM person who I can get one from?
I will be happy to do that. I'll even send you my contact information. So WHC, it's a long-standing organization. They're based in Washington, D.C. I consider them to be real practitioners. They're in the business of advising companies, most of their members are corporations, as I mentioned earlier, how to manage their properties, and they're very strict. To get certification, you need a certification component, conservation component, as well as education component. We saw pictures of birdhouses, wildlife, and it's all of the above you need to demonstrate on your property. So I would say they're leading edge thinkers. They're very much focusing on, right now, one of the projects is focusing on how to quantify and measure biodiversity loss and progress. It's not easy. You hear companies, including my own, talking about biodiversity-focused goals and so on, but we still need better metrics to measure that. So that's about WHC. You can look them up. In terms of the kit, I will be happy to send you a copy of it. I mean, we're making it available to our employees, as I said. We want them to share with the community, so I'll share that with you.
Thank you. We have a question up here. This will be the last question.
I'll try and keep it short. My name's Andy Glusenkamp. I'm with San Antonio Zoo. This one's also for Dr. Wetz. So you mentioned the importance of eelgrass and carbon sequestration and the sheer size of Baffin Bay. And I was impressed with the data that you, as citizen scientists at your lab, have collected over the years, that you can really put a dollar value per square meter of that bay. And because you and I both know that you're talking about one of the most powerful carbon sinks available in nature, those shallow bays and the associated wetland ecosystems, they rival almost anything, right? And so that seems like a super attractive exchange with perhaps people in this room in order to put together the capital for these really small on-the-ground changes, relatively small, like a proper water treatment plant for a local community. That's pennies on the dollar. What an incredible return for the carbon sequestration ability of a healthy Baffin Bay. I promise I'll keep it short.
Yeah, thank you. And coincidentally, the Texan by Nature folks just handed us their first draft of basically what you're talking about, that economic assessment. So we're going to be working through that with them over the next few months. And yeah, I think there's a real opportunity there for sure.
And what Dr. Wetz is referencing, I mentioned the UN SDG report card earlier. I think there's a QR code out there where you can scan and see it. They're all in draft form right now, but that's something that we've been working on with Ecometrics to get at exactly what that question was about. Well, thank you so much. You are true inspirations and models of success, and I just really appreciate you taking the time to share and hopefully inspire the audience today. So. So we've had a little bit of a change of schedule for the end of the day, just to warn you. We're going to end the day with a quick summary and then some closing remarks from our inspirational founder, former First Lady Laura Bush. And then we'll get into the recognition of this year's Texan by Nature 20. So thank you to each of our speakers for being here today, for meaningful, inspiring dialogue. Your time, your experience, your candor is greatly appreciated. And I want to say thank you again to the Texan by Nature team. I see a lot of you for being brilliant, passionate, and just steadfast each and every single day. The work that's done is because of just the commitment that you have, and I just want to say thank you. So there are a couple of sound bites. There's so many sound bites that are standing out for me today, but I'll start with no bees, no food, no us. Pretty much sums it up, right? No water, no us. That paints the picture, I think, simpler than anything else. It's time for us to step back, to work together, to think at that broader system level of every single action has an interaction and an impact. So what is that? How do we get in front of the future today? How do we not use that resource instead of fixing it 10 years later? How do we just become more efficient? Hopefully at this point you're thinking about all of this. Hopefully you are thinking about how to apply the discussions when you go home, and maybe even perhaps how to get involved. Shameless plug, if you're a conservation organization, our Conservation Wrangler applications for next year are now open. They are on the website, and that's absolutely a way to get more deeply involved. Those are due at the end of January, so take a look there. Or if you're a conservation organization that is not a partner of ours yet, go and look at our Conservation Partner Program. It is a service program. It is free of charge to you. Please get involved and join the conversation. If you are an industry member, if you're a business, our membership program is available to engage in deeper dialogue. You can get involved with Dark Skies and Lights Out initiatives. You can get involved in submitting data for the Texan by Nature 20. You can get involved with the Texas Water Action Collaborative. There is no shortage of opportunity to get involved in a way that is most relevant to you. So we started the day with a quote. And that was, the best way to predict the future is to create it. So what do you want to predict for our future, your organization's future, conservation's future? What future will you create? Today has given us a lot to think about and hopefully to act upon. Will you apply, evolve, or embrace a new technology, a tool, a framework to help in decision-making, goal setting, reporting? Will you build a new coalition or start participating in one more thoroughly, adding your expertise? Will you embrace deepening workforce and community expectations around environmental stewardship and innovate towards better resource utilization and profitability? Will you work to provide nature access and/or care of nature into your long-term strategy? Will you step back and better understand your personal, organizational, or community role in broader systems? Will you help your partners do the same? Will you leave a legacy? And what will that be? There's no shortage of opportunity. You've heard that today. No matter your passion, no matter your geography, no matter your industry, no matter your goal. Today we have an opportunity to take what we have learned and do something different and do something new. It doesn't have to be brand new, it just has to be new in your space. We have that opportunity today to realize progress we have not yet imagined. So I encourage you and I challenge you, as I challenged you at the start today, to join one another in thinking bigger and thinking broader and doing things differently. Make it the beginning of a movement. You know, I love what Sarah said earlier about the movement. We know how to do this. We've done it. We did it back in 1980 for litter. Make it a movement. Every single one of us involved in conservation impact. Each of us shaping our future together, predicting the conservation future for the world by creating it starting right now. Thank you.
I was an agriculturalist, trying to get all I could for the land. But at that time, I've realized that this land is not just a resource to be used and abused. It's something that we have to take care of and look at all of it. We have to go back to the way it was if we're going to save these precious natural resources we've been given to enjoy.
Over the last several decades, we've been losing thousands and thousands of acres of our wetland habitats. Oil and gas, livestock production, agricultural producers, you name it. When you look at what the prairie used to be, you've lost all that water storage.
The river has some parts that are breathtakingly beautiful, but there are other places you want to cry because it's so dirty. And it's all the same river. Right now, we have an opportunity to take this gem, polish it off, and show it to the world.
The situation for fishing in state waters was just terrible, and we decided we were going to do something about it.
You gotta want to do it. You gotta want to be in this business. I've been going out there so long, it's just part of me now.
Here's my take. Every bend is a new adventure. It's just you and nature.
I'm kind of the steward for this land that's here. Hopefully I leave it better than the way I found it.
It's always refreshing to meet a person so authentic that their actions are bona fide extensions of who they are. That's the case with Laura Bush, the founder of Texan by Nature and my friend. I'm Adair Margot, the secretary of the board, and the great thing about this organization is it is truly an extension of Laura Bush. I first met Laura in 1995 when she was the new First Lady of Texas. I just recorded Tom Lee's oral history, and she came out to El Paso to see the book. Tom Lee painted our environment in El Paso and wrote about it. And when people asked him what he found so appealing about the dried up, barren place he obviously preferred to live and work in, he said that he loved it for the clarity of its sunlight, the intensity of its sunlight, the clarity of its sky, the hugeness of its space, its revealed structure of naked Earth's primal forms, without adornment. Well, Laura Bush loved El Paso too. It was her mother's home. And she told me how when her mother would put her on the train in Midland to come out to El Paso to visit her grandparents, she knew she was almost there when she saw Mount Franklin and the Juarez Mountains in the distance. Well, we hit it off. And on future visits, there were lots of them, she'd want to climb Mount Cristo Rey and get a view of 3 states and 2 countries from its summit. And when I'd visit her at the governor's mansion in Austin, after dinner, she'd say, "Let's go see what's growing in the garden." And I'd follow her unhurried pace outside. Even after George decided to run for president, I traveled with her to Michigan, and after a reception, she mentioned she'd read there was going to be a star shower that evening, and wouldn't it be so much fun to watch it? Well, our host laid blankets on the lawn, and we all bundled up, lying on our backs, looking up at a starlit sky in the freezing cold. Laura has always loved nature, and by her example, encouraged others to take the time to love it too. And when we love something, we take care of it. That's why when she says that it's the people and the land that make Texas great, and that when we're working in harmony, everyone benefits, she means it from the heart. Laura Bush.
Thanks so much, Adair. I do love El Paso. Thank you, Adair, for being the Texan by Nature Board Secretary. You do a terrific job, and we're fortunate to have you representing El Paso. And a heartfelt thanks to all the Texan by Nature board members who are here today. Catherine Armstrong, Joe Crafton, Reagan Gammon, Robert Horton, Ray Engel, Elaine Magruder, Carolyn Miller, Roxanne Newman, Tamara Trail, and Neil Wilkins. And a special thanks to Cynthia Pickett Stevenson, who served as our board chair for the last 2 years. I'd also like to thank some Texan by Nature supporters today, our generous Sustainability Fund leaders, the Stillwater Foundation, Ray and Becky Engel, John Now, HEB, and the Friedkin Group, and our sincere gratitude to Lyda Hill Philanthropies and Marathon Petroleum for supporting our partner work. To Hess Corporation for underwriting Texas Water Action Collaborative expansion, to HEB and Enbridge for supporting our Conservation Wrangler and Summit initiatives, and to Phillips 66, NRG Reliant, Co-America, EOG Resources, and of course, my friend Dee Dee Rose. Thank you for your continued support of our annual summit and our Conservation Wrangler program. But of course, the biggest thanks today goes to our fearless leader, Joni Carswell. Joni, you've done it again. You've turned Texan by Nature into a national brand. Other states are looking to your Texan by Nature model as a framework for their own conservation plans. So thank you, Joni, and thanks to the wonderful staff for making Texan by Nature something we're all so proud of. Wow, what a wonderful day it's been. I know I speak for everyone here when I say I'm inspired by each of our speakers. Whether we heard about new partnerships, innovative models, or bolder goals, we all have new findings that we can take back to our own communities and our community organizations. I hope that you'll leave here motivated to apply what you learned and energized to be a change maker within your community. It's clear that the leaders in this room share the Texan by Nature spirit. You know that the future of conservation lies in collaborative efforts, in attention to data and metrics, in thinking and solving at the system level, and in new and innovative models. But not everyone knows just how important it all is to the future of our state and our population. And that's why 11 years ago, I started Texan by Nature with my dear friends Reagan Gammon and Catherine Armstrong. We had a desire to take care of this great state, and we knew that meant taking care of the natural resources that provide sustenance, income, recreation, and beauty to the place we call home. In fact, our first name was Taking Care of Texas, until we found out that was the motto of some other conservation group. We started with what we knew would work. We brought together small groups of people like you, leaders from all sectors, who could work together to advance projects and initiatives that benefit us all. And when that went well, we knew that we had to promote the best work being done to make sure that it could be easily replicated, supported, and used as a model in Texas and around the world. And now, over a decade later, I look out at this impressive audience with leaders from all corners of Texas, representing diverse areas of industry, community, and conservation. And I say, we've done it. Texan by Nature is making clear and measurable progress that will benefit our state for generations to come, and the momentum just keeps building. Two key themes stood out to me today: the need for collaboration and the desire to think deeply about how everything we do impacts our natural resources, our economy, and our health. In a world where life is whizzing by, it can be difficult to realize the domino effect of our actions. But when it comes to protecting our environment, the most important thing we can do is to pause and evaluate. Do you need to drive to run that errand, or could you just walk? Should you turn on the TV for your kids, or could they go play in the backyard? Should you turf your front yard, or could you add some native grasses and pollinating plants instead? How about that vacant lot next door to your office building? What if it were turned into a park? Challenging the answers to these questions will determine the future of our state. Over the last few years, growing bodies of research have shown what we always knew. Being outside in nature is good for your health. It reduces stress. It's good for your cardiovascular system. In a time where people, especially children, are inside more than any time in our history, it's critical that we act now. We need our natural resources, not only for powering our economy, but powering our bodies and our minds as well. The easiest way to promote our natural spaces is to teach our children to appreciate them from a young age, just as my mother and grandmother did. When I was a little girl, I enjoy spending outdoors with my grandchildren whenever we're together. Mila, Poppy, Hal, and Cora love to be outside. They enjoy exploring the restored prairie at our ranch and taking Freddie, for our dog, on long beach walks when we're in Maine in the summer. I believe that a love for the outdoors is the purest thing we can pass on to our children. All you have to do is take your kids or grandkids outside, play in your backyard, go on nature walks, and let them remind you what it's like to view our natural world through their fresh eyes. Whether it's with your family or your company, every one of you can be Texan by nature. You can participate in Lights Out to protect our migratory birds. You can conserve water or plant milkweed that the monarch butterfly needs. You can do it on your business campuses, or you can try something new with your family, your organization, or your community. You can drive innovation in conservation. Over the last 11 years, we've had the privilege of working with 30 different conservation wrangler projects, from coast to prairie to far west Texas, from urban to rural. These projects have set the bar for conservation. They're a visible example of leaders and citizens making a difference right where they are. So I'd like to take this time to congratulate our 2022 Texan by Nature Conservation Wranglers, Texas Water Foundation's Texas Runs on Water program, Hives for Heroes, Texas Partnerships for Forest and Water, and the Hart Research Institute and Coastal Bend Bays and Estuaries Bringing Baffin Back project. Thank you for your good work. You're creating a brighter and cleaner future for us all. Thanks to everybody here for spending the day with us, and thanks for the important work you do. The future of conservation is in this room right now. It's you. The way you're working together, it's your innovations. It's your commitment to a beautiful, healthy future. It's your desire to leave our state more beautiful than ever, and I'm proud to do it with you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mrs. Bush. You're always an inspiration. As many of you know, I'm Jenny Burden, the Director of Development with Texan by Nature, and I again want to thank everyone for taking part in this day of learning and dialogue. A heartfelt thank you to our partners, sponsors, and members for making today, our 5th annual summit, possible. We're deeply appreciative for every single one of you. Thanks to everyone who joined us online. We had nearly 300 people registered as of this morning, which is so exciting. We look forward to continuing the conversation with you in the future. I look forward to engaging with each of you through our programs. At this time, our online streaming will end. I am so excited that with everything that was shared today, from viewing the world as an ecosystem to thinking deeply about how we as humans can learn from the successes and lessons of other people to create greater, more impactful progress for our natural resources. I'm honored to end the day with a celebration by announcing our 2022 Texan by Nature 20. We'll be celebrating the best of conservation this evening at dinner. However, as we close out the summit, it's fitting that we celebrate industry leaders pushing the envelope for conservation and sustainability in Texas. The Texan by Nature 20 recognizes the best and most innovative work in conservation coming from businesses based and operating in Texas. As part of the Texan by Nature 20, Texan by Nature honors companies across 12 industries whose ingenuity cultivates impactful programs and forges new, beneficial paths in conservation. With 170 million acres of land and global leaderships across multiple industries, Texas leaders who see the value in partnering with conservation and integrating sustainability into their businesses create impact here at home that truly changes the world. To select the 2022 Texan by Nature 20, our team evaluated company data submissions were independently researched more than 2,000 companies. This included Texas's publicly traded and private companies for 12 industry sectors. All companies were evaluated on key criteria through a 17-point scoring system to narrow down the list to about 60 companies. Key scoring criteria included stated commitment to conservation, reported metrics and measured impact, return on conservation data for land, water, wildlife, people, waste, energy, and more, and activities such as infrastructure, production, supply chain, employee engagement, and more. So after you hear this list, if you feel that your company meets those criteria, make sure that you submit your information for next year. Each year, an esteemed selection committee of top industry leaders is formed to evaluate the top 60 companies and select the final honorees that you'll see today. Thank you to this year's selection committee. You can see that these are the leaders in their respective organizations. Thank you. And represent all industries honored in the Texan by Nature 20. Many of them are here with us today. We are deeply appreciative of your commitment and your perspective. Please join me in thanking this wonderful committee for the time given to understand and evaluate the goals, progress, and results of the industry and conservation. I will now share this year's Texan by Nature 20. If you're an honoree, please make your way to the stage as I call your name. Once we have the complete group up here on stage, please stay here so we can get a photo. I'm delighted to announce the 2022 Texan by Nature 20. And then this is my turn. Austin Parks and Recreation. Cap Metro. Cirrus Logic. Cemex. Comerica Bank. Darling Ingredients. The DFW Airport. Farmer Brothers. Holt Cat. IBM. The North American Development Bank. NRG. Overland Partners. Oops. Sanderson Farms. There we go. Stantec. Cisco. Texas Health Resources. Vistra. Vital Farms. And finally, Yeti. Please join me, now that everybody's clapped 20 times, congratulating and thanking these leaders for their vision and leadership in conservation and sustainability. You're gonna have to scoot together.
All right, so now we're going to take some pictures of these lovely leaders. The reception should be starting just outside, so if you do not have a photo card and are not part of this, you are welcome to go ahead and start the reception.
Do you want to group without
Yeah.
Mrs. Bush first?